The Japanese military, emboldened by their success, began to tighten their grip on the region. They established a puppet state, Manchukuo, and installed a government that would serve their interests. Deep in the heart of Manchuria, a land shrouded in mystery and history, a secret existed. A secret so horrific, so deeply buried in the annals of time, it was buried for decades. This wasn't just a hidden facility, it was a place of nightmares. A place where the boundaries of human decency were crossed. It was a torture lab. A place where unimaginable experiments were carried out on innocent people. Men, women, and even children were subjected to the most inhumane treatments. The world would come to know this place as Unit 731, a name that would forever be etched in the history of human cruelty. The stories told about Unit 731 were the stuff of nightmares, tales of vivisections, biological warfare experiments, and other unspeakable horrors. Prisoners, referred to as logs, were subjected to unimaginable cruelty. They were treated as mere objects, stripped of their humanity. The goal was simple: to advance Japan's wartime ambitions, no matter the cost. The experiments were designed to develop new weapons, to find ways to inflict maximum damage on the enemy. The whispers of these atrocities haunted the survivors, the families of the victims, and the perpetrators themselves. The memories of the horrors they witnessed and endured, the families of the victims, and the perpetrators themselves. The legacy of Unit 731 is a dark chapter in human history, a reminder of the depths of cruelty that humans are capable of. It serves as a stark warning to future generations, to never forget the past, and to strive for a world where such atrocities are never repeated. The year was 1931. It was a time of great change and upheaval across the globe. The world was still reeling from the aftermath of the Great War, and nations were grappling with economic instability and political unrest. Amidst this backdrop, Japan, a nation with imperial ambitions, was poised to make a bold and aggressive move. Japan, a nation on the rise, invaded Manchuria. This invasion was not just a military maneuver, it was a calculated step towards expanding their empire. The Japanese military, fueled by a sense of superiority and a desire for resources, saw Manchuria as a land of opportunity. The invasion was swift and brutal, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. This act of aggression marked a turning point. The international community watched in shock and horror as Japan defied treaties and norms. Headlines around the world screamed of the invasion, and nations began to realize the extent of Japan's ambitions. The League of Nations condemned the act, but their words fell on deaf ears. It was the beginning of a dark chapter in Japanese history. The occupation of Manchuria was just the start. The Japanese military, emboldened by their success, began to tighten their grip on the region. They established a puppet state, Manchukuo, and installed a government that would serve their interests. The military, drunk on power and driven by a warped sense of national destiny, began to experiment with biological and chemical weapons. They believed that these weapons would give them an edge in future conflicts. The experiments were conducted in secret, away from the prying eyes of the world. Unit 731 was born out of this toxic mix of ambition and ruthlessness. This covert unit was tasked with developing and testing these horrific weapons. The facility was a place of nightmares, where unspeakable acts were committed in the name of science and progress. Located near the city of Barbed, the facility was shrouded in secrecy. The Japanese military went to great lengths to conceal the true nature of their work. The buildings were heavily guarded, and the surrounding area was off-limits to civilians. The secrecy only added to the aura of fear and suspicion that surrounded Unit 731. It was here that scientists, under the command of the Imperial Army, began their gruesome work. These scientists, many of whom were highly educated and respected in their fields, were now part of a dark and twisted endeavor. They conducted experiments on live subjects, often with no regard for human life or suffering. They were driven by a chilling belief that their research was justified in the name of national security. The propaganda of the time painted these scientists as patriots, working tirelessly to protect their nation. But the reality was far more sinister. The experiments conducted at Unit 731 would leave a lasting scar on history, a grim reminder of the depths of human cruelty. Unit 731 was a sprawling complex, Hidden in plain sight, it was disguised as a water purification plant. But behind the facade lay a chamber of horrors. The prisoners, mostly Chinese but also Russians, Koreans and others, were kept in cramped, squalid conditions. They were infected with diseases, used as living test subjects for vivisections, and subjected to extreme temperatures and pressures. The air was thick with the stench of decay and the sound of suffering. The guards, desensitized to the horrors they witnessed, carried out their orders with cold efficiency. The experiments conducted at Unit 731 defied comprehension. Prisoners were infected with plague, cholera, anthrax, and other deadly diseases. Vivisections were performed without anesthesia, the victims' screams swallowed by the walls of the facility. Limbs were amputated to study blood loss, frostbite was induced to observe its effects, and prisoners were used to test the effectiveness of bombs and flamethrowers. The scientists, driven by a perverse curiosity, kept meticulous records of their findings. They saw their victims not as human beings, but as expendable tools in their quest for scientific advancement. Section 5. Scars that never fade. The physical and psychological scars inflicted on the victims of Unit 731 ran deep. Many died agonizing deaths within the walls of the facility. Those who survived were left with lifelong disabilities, chronic illnesses, and the haunting memories of their ordeal. Their stories, often told with a mix of pain and defiance, paint a harrowing picture of the depravity that unfolded within Unit 731. They are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Section 6. Justice, but at what cost? After the war, the Allies, eager to gain an advantage in the emerging Cold War, struck a deal with Japan. In exchange for their silence, the scientists of Unit 731 were granted immunity from prosecution. The full extent of their crimes remained largely hidden from the world. This decision, made in the name of political expediency, denied justice to the victims and allowed the perpetrators to live out their lives in the shadows. It also cast a long shadow over Japan's post-war reconciliation efforts. Section 7. Living with the Ghosts of Unit 731. For decades, the Japanese government remained tight-lipped about Unit 731. The horrors that unfolded there were largely absent from history books, and public discussion of the facility was taboo. But the ghosts of Unit 731 refused to be silenced. Survivors began to come forward, demanding recognition and accountability. Journalists and historians, driven by a sense of justice, began to piece together the truth about Unit 731, uncovering documents and testimonies that the government had tried to bury. Section 8. Never Forget, Never Again. The story of Unit 731 is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the horrors that can unfold when ethical boundaries are crossed in the name of science. During World War II, Unit 731, a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army, conducted some of the most inhumane experiments in history. These experiments were carried out on thousands of innocent civilians and prisoners of war, leading to unimaginable suffering and death. It is a story that demands to be told, no matter how uncomfortable or painful it may be. The victims of Unit 731 were subjected to horrific medical procedures without anesthesia, exposure to deadly pathogens, and other brutal forms of experimentation. Their suffering must not be forgotten, and their stories must be shared to ensure that future generations understand the depths of human cruelty and the importance of ethical standards in scientific research. By remembering the victims and acknowledging the atrocities that were committed in the name of the Japanese Empire, we honor their memory and reaffirm our commitment to human rights and dignity. Memorials and ceremonies serve as poignant reminders of the past, urging us to reflect on the consequences of unchecked power and the moral responsibilities we hold. These acts of remembrance are not just about looking back, they are about shaping a future where such atrocities are inconceivable. We must learn from the mistakes of the past to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. Education plays a crucial role in this endeavor. By teaching the younger generations about the atrocities of Unit 731 and other wartime horrors, we instill in them the values of empathy, respect, and the importance of ethical conduct. It is through education and remembrance that we can build a world where the phrase, "never forget, never again," is not just a slogan, but a reality. Section 9. The Weight of Silence. Even today, the legacy of Unit 731 continues to haunt Japan. The government, while acknowledging the facility's existence, has yet to fully come to terms with the extent of its crimes or offer a sincere apology to the victims and their families. The weight of this silence hangs heavy, a constant reminder of the need for truth, justice, and reconciliation. Only by confronting the darkness of its past can Japan truly move forward and build a future based on peace, respect, and the recognition of the inherent dignity of all human beings.